Rob, there was one thing I asked you to do throughout the last year, like one thing above all else, and that was don't get COVID. So what do you go and do? You went and you got COVID.
To be fair,
how could you do this to me? How could you inconvenience me in this way, Rob?
I will blame literally everyone else before me because I tried not to get it.
And yet, you still did it. You had one job, Robert.
Well, it took me 10 days to catch it from someone within my own household. So I'm just saying it's not as contagious as the government wants you to think.
We have to cut that. Dr. Fauci will come to your house.
I'm sorry, but me and David Icke have a deal about our YouTube channel there.
I wasn't informed.
The
of
deal
any
is
such
we
deals.
stop making videos.
Yeah, hello everyone. It's been, let's check, because YouTube has this handy feature where it tells me how long it's been since we've uploaded. So at time of recording, it has been 155 days and 7 hours since we last uploaded.
Are you ready for a better stat, Dave? Azerbaijan has been in 2 wars since we last updated.
I mean, we did have a video on the cards. We recorded it and everything. It was all this new stuff. We had this new format, totally new approach. We recorded it all. I started editing it.
Turns out it was bad.
It was terrible. It was absolutely awful. What the fuck were we thinking?
We literally
that didn't
cancelled
get
ourselves,
made.
And if you've seen our opinions,
literally, I scrapped the video.
I don't think the fans understand how much creative control I have, which is just
none.
Well, you claim none, but if I say an idea is bad, we just don't do it.
Yeah,
because I refuse to support it.
You kind of confirmed what I was already thinking at that point.
Just remember, Dave, I'm always 1 day away from posting those pictures I have of you saved on my hard drive.
Do your worst, man. I don't give a shit.
The audience might.
Yeah, they already do. It's fine.
Just wait till the dogs comes out and they realize how much of a twat you are.
Oh, they already know that, dude.
I mean, no, but they'll know about the hat, and that's what's worse.
I'm pretty sure that's already come up on several videos, so they are aware that.
No, you keep cutting it. I'm fairly certain it's never been revealed in a video.
Okay, I'm gonna need to include that this time, just so you can't threaten me with that in the future.
So, Dave, what are we reviewing on this awful day?
Yes, I've completely forgotten how to do this. That's how long this has been.
Well, Dave, I asked what we're reviewing. You tell us the title, and then we explain how we're reviewing it and what version of the thing we're reviewing. Because, we're contrarians and never pick just one version. And then we end up talking about the manga for 40 days.
We are doing a follow-up to the video that we released this time last year, which was Mobile Suit Gundam. So, a year on, and having spent the entire year fucking around and not really getting a whole lot done, I figure for the end of the year, we should probably do something that's, core content. So we are going to be covering Mobile Suit Zeta Gundam, the direct sequel to the original Mobile Suit Gundam series. So this was released between March 1985 and February 1986. Unsurprisingly, it's a fucking Sunrise production. Who could have seen that coming? And it's directed by our boy Yoshiyuki Tomino. Rob, tell us a bit about the show.
How do I explain the show without using the word that the audience no longer wants me to use?
There's several words that they don't want us to use anymore.
Autism.
Yeah, they don't like that one.
Yeah, I wonder why a bunch of anime enthusiasts don't like me throwing around the autism word. Basically, the show is about a teenager called Camille Biden and his many adventures. Also, there's a not Char. I mean, Quattro Bacina.
Who is not Char.
Also not Char. Every Gundam has a not Char, and in Zeta, it's actually Char playing not Char, which is kind of weird when you think of it.
We did this bit in the last video. We can't do this bit again.
Right. No, I'm doing this bit here, right? So Quattro Bacina, right? Do you know why he's called that?
Because Tomino wanted to include a title that sounds vaguely like vagina?
Correct.
Seriously?
His name is A Quarter Vagina. It's a reference to Octopussy. Tomino a shit. Just remember this.
I was joking.
No, this show is that bad.
In fact, I tell you what, I've copied pasted this directly, Robert. Why don't you read this out in a dramatic, vaguely Optimus Prime voice, and this will work.
It is Universal Century 0087, and the 1-year war between Earth Federation and the Principality of Zeon is over. The Earth Federation has created an elite task force known as the Titans, who are responsible for hunting the remaining Zeon forces. However, the power-hungry Titans have shown themselves to be no better than Zeon, spurring the creation of a rebellious faction called the Anti-Earth Union Group. 17-year-old Camille Biden lives in the colony Green Noah, home to a Titan base. Camille gets in trouble after assaulting a Titan officer who misgenders him, an event that coincides with an attack led by former Zeon ace, Char Aznavour, now known as the AUG pilot Quattro Bacina. When Camille seals a Titan prototype Gundam, he soon finds himself in the middle of a dangerous conflict. There you go, Dave.
Didn't even shout any racial slurs during that. I'm very proud.
I added one joke.
You did. Good job. My joke that I've already done, but that's fine. Good job.
It's man.
Zeta actually has a lot of moving parts and factions and elements coming together to create a fairly complex world and story. So the Titans are essentially the space CIA in that they're using the cover of hunting Xeon remnants to do space crimes. These include gassing whole colonies, massacring civilians, and worst of all, beating the shit out of Bright Noah. In response to these space crimes, several groups have formed to oppose the Titans, including the Anti-Earth Union group, comprised of both former Fedi and Xeon forces, and the Earth-based resistance movement Caraba? Yeah, Caraba. And if that wasn't enough factions for you, there's also Axis Xeon floating around the periphery, who are basically Xeon remnants who went, fuck you all, we're gonna go live in deep space away from you and your collective bullshit, but now they're back for plot reasons. Also, there's the Jupiter fleet, who basically act as this weird sub-faction of the Titans with their own goals and agendas. So, yeah, busy series, lots of moving parts. The question is how much those parts all work.
The next thing in your notes, Dave, says run through the cast.
I guess we can, yeah. So Zeta, as we mentioned, it brings in some new characters, and it also brings back several returning characters as well in this newer, kind of darker universe that has followed on from the 1 Year War.
Who else do we need to cover? Shar.
Who are you talking about? There's no Shar in this series.
Sorry, Edward Mass.
This is a really interesting one, actually, because in the original series, Shar is very much a villain, although he's a sympathetic villain for most of the series. In this, he's now an outright protagonist.
No, he's like how Stone Cold Steve Austin is in wrestling. He's not necessarily a good guy, but he's also not necessarily a bad guy anymore. It's more blatant, whereas like in Gundam, he's going about killing all the... What's the royal family of Xeon called?
Yeah, he spends the original series murdering all of the Zabi guys, including his mate. What's that little purple-haired twink called again?
Garma.
There we go, thank you.
No one cares about your twink waifu. Now shut the fuck up.
But yeah, he spends the entire first series murdering the Zabi family in the belief that that is going to fix everything, and by Zeta Gundam he's going, fuck, no, that won't actually, shit, what do I do now?
Let's murder more people.
He feels like he's kind of grown a bit since the original series, and he's realized that maybe he doesn't have all the answers. That's why he's kind of stepped back, and he's not taking this command role, and why he's no longer using the mantle of Shar, and he's going by Quattro.
He came here
instead.
for one reason, Dave.
He did come here to laugh at. This is the series. So yeah, he's a little bit haunted by his actions in the 1 Year War, and he's one of the, not quite a commander, but he's one of the senior figures within the Anti-Earth Union group.
Just so we're clear, AIRG is a dumb name. Why would you be a union and a group?
He's taking on a new aspect as well. As you described, he's kind of done a face turn.
More wrestling parlance. Let's go.
Yes, of course. I understand the wrestling. I definitely watch that.
Disgusting.
Wrestling's weird. Anyway, he becomes more of a mentor figure to Camille in this series. He's actually one of the few people that Camille, who is this notoriously hot-headed character, he's one of the few people that Camille will listen to.
It's almost like a character who in the last series was actually like, what was he doing? He was like, what's the word? When you like nonce on kids. What's the right word there?
What the fuck are you talking about? Why are you talking about noncing on children? I'm concerned.
I'm saying like Shar's character, like his entire thing is like trying to trick kids into being space autists.
Are you thinking of Char's counterattack?
No, but even in Gundam itself, what he does with Lala Soon,
you mean, not Sailor Mass.
Fuck Divina. I'm tired, man. I'm so tired.
You have one job.
But like he's grooming different kids, and I'm just saying, since Zeta Gundam is very much from Camille's point of view, Shard's clearly fucking grooming him, and that is my interpretation. I'm now going to walk out the room. Refuse to
enters the room. Quattro's a groomer. Refuses to explain. Leaves.
You know I'm right.
No, I don't, because as you mentioned, you refuse to explain.
Well, basically, he's trying to groom him into being like himself, and then what happens to Camille? Space coma.
But yeah, I guess you could say that Quattro kind of does develop quite a bit throughout this series as well. He grows as a person, eventually does decide to take on the mantle of Shar again, but for different reasons this time. And then they forget literally all of that character development in Char's counterattack, because Tomino, I guess.
What do you mean I can't just randomly change my opinions? What the fuck?
What's consistency between series anyway? It's overrated.
Neo Xeon.
Our main character this time is Camille Baidan.
Who is a boy.
He is a boy, he is a man. He's this brilliant but troubled student, and you don't need to tell him to get in the robot, because he's gonna steal it. I'm not kidding. His entire motivation to get involved with the plot is basically some cops bullied him, so he steals a prototype war machine to fuck with them back, and winds up embroiled in an insurgency group. No one hates cops as much as Camille Baidan. I really fucking like Camille as a protagonist, actually. I know that's not necessarily something that everyone will agree on, but he is probably my favorite Gundam protagonist that we've
What's that,
covered
Dave?
so far.
The kid with the floppy hair that's a bit weird that you associate with? Who would be surprised by this? He's a really well-written character. It's just his introduction's just, I'm a bit of a, what's the right word?
Inevitably, you're going to compare him to Amuro. In fact, the series itself does that. Yeah. And it's fun to contrast the two because there's similarities between Amuro and Camille, and yet they are both very, very different characters at their core.
Now, Dave, do you recognize Camille Biden's voice, or do you not? Oh, Dave!
Not, no. Help me out here.
He's the narrator of Samurai Flamenco.
Is he actually?
Yeah.
I knew you'd find a way to bring up Samurai Flamenco in some capacity.
All I'm saying is we gotta watch it again.
We've already covered it twice on the channel. We have two...
We're into our third year, Dave. Yeah, you know what this means.
I mean, I guess you could say that Camille is a much more defiant protagonist compared to Amuro in the first series. Amuro has that bit kind of halfway through where he takes off and is like, I'm not piloting this thing anymore, fuck you guys. But ultimately, he kind of surrenders to what's required of him. He becomes the soldier that they need him to be. Camille, meanwhile, remains a lot more defiant. He's always his own man in this series. He never becomes what others expect him to be. He remains very defiant to that. He'll fight for the same cause as them, but he's fighting on his own terms. He's fighting for his own reasons. In that sense, he's not a soldier. He's also acutely aware of one of the key themes that you'll see throughout Zeta, which is adults using and exploiting children to fight their own wars. That is something that incenses Camille the entire time, and it's what he strives to stop for the entire series, and is what ultimately does drive him a little bit insane by the end.
What's that about Rob saying that, that Char's grooming him? No, I will not make that argument in a different way. Dave.
No, go on. Come on, make that argument.
No, I refuse to elaborate.
For fuck's sake. There's also Paptimus Shiroko, leader of the Jupiter fleet, a man who radiates such potent Sigma male energy, he manipulates women and actual children into doing the grinding for him.
He's quite a famous voice actor, if I remember rightly. He's like in the Moomins and shit.
Bin Shimada.
Even before people don't realize the Moomins is Kino.
I think Shiroko is probably the better of the two main villains that we have in this series. He's kind of similar to Char in some ways. If you compare Char in the original series to what Shiroko is in Zeta, he's this guy who is technically part of the Titans, but he's also using the Titans for his own ends.
Oh, I remembered who he is. He's Broly in the Dragon Ball Z.
You're still reading other stuff that he's done, aren't you?
Yeah, pretty much. I only half listened to what you say.
So, Jared, I guess? Jared Mesa?
Local misgender.
I have thoughts on Jared. Like, he's
half-baked.
Yes, I think that's a fair description. He works in the early parts of the series where he's this fun rival for, well, not fun, because he does some bad shit.
He's Team Rocket.
He kind of is.
Jared is this dude who's just like, hi, I'm gonna punch a kid because I think he's a girl. And then Camille is a bit of a dick, and then for some reason Jared just shows up to steal the Pikachu, and that just continues throughout the series. Well, he's trying to get back his Gundam, but it is just Team Rocket.
He never kind of goes beyond the Camille's my enemy and I'm gonna take him out. Like that's his whole shtick throughout the entire thing. Whereas Camille develops so much, but by the end he's more or less forgotten that Jared even exists. He's not angry at him anymore. He more just kind of pities him. And maybe you could say that's intentional. Maybe that was something that they were trying to do. However, they give Jared so much screen time trying to come up with something for him to be other than Team Rocket, and they never figure out what the fuck they're going to do with him anyway. He's got great hair though. You gotta give him that. Best hair in the game. Then there's Hammond Karn, regent of Axis Zeon, who is definitely not just there to set up a sequel. No sir. So you've got a number of characters from the original series making a return, in addition to Char, from Bright Noah to Amuro, Kobayashi, and even Kai Shiden, who arrives into the story by beating the shit out of a bunch of Titan soldiers who've captured AEUG agent Rakoa Lond, and then informs her that he's definitely not hitting on her. Absolute fucking lad.
Dare I say it? By Allah, he is a journalist. Bright Noah, see our other reviews. His character hasn't changed.
Yeah, he's just, they bring him back. He's still the most competent man there.
Is this the show where he's eating the burgers? There's a show where he eats a lot of burgers.
You've got more new characters and story elements in the form of the cyber new types, who are the result of the Titans trying to weaponize new types, but it's the Titans, so naturally they do it by taking a bunch of emotionally traumatized young women and doing invasive experiments on them. This is Zeta Gundam, no one's allowed to be happy. Two of these cyber new types, specifically for Murasame and Rosamiya, wind up embroiled with Camille's story, and he inevitably does the I can save them routine, because again, this is Zeta Gundam, no one's allowed to be happy. Spoiler alert, no, he fucking can't. You have gone on record saying you liked Zeta before. I'm going to point this out.
Facts don't care about your opinions.
It's not an opinion. That is a fact.
Prove it.
Okay. It's literally on videos that we have uploaded. You have said, I like Zeta. Now you're like,
I actually do really like Zeta.
One thing we can say about Zeta is that, for better or worse, this is the series that Tomino wanted to make.
And it shows.
Yeah, it does. Mobile Suit Gundam had a load of interference. We discussed that in the video covering it, how it basically, it wasn't until Gunpla became a thing that it actually got some traction. By Zeta, the higher-ups at Sunrise had realized, okay, we appear to have some sort of weird auteur creator in the form of Yoshiyuki Tomino. Let's just let him do what he wants with this and see what happens. And so he got the full run, got a bigger budget, he got to do what he wanted to do, which is why it is as fucking weird and in places brilliant as it is, and why all the villains look like Neil Sedaka.
Yes. The other thing with Zeta though is the animation is amazing. I don't think Zeta gets hyped up enough when it's like, by the way, look at this mecha shit. Zeta's plot is talked about a lot, but the actual combat and mecha fights are really cool, and I really love the way the new type communication happens in Zeta, where like you don't see the cockpit, and that's supposed to represent how they view the HUD element of being inside a Gundam, is they can see all around them, and it's fucking cool looking. And it's really nicely designed. So a lot of mechas don't do that properly, where it's like, the cockpit's really cool. Like Evangelion is the peak cockpit aesthetic.
Okay, I'm inside the Evangelion entry plug and I'm ready to go.
And then like Zeta's like, we don't need a cockpit to make this look cool. Watch this. Even just all the space battles, and as much as I shit on the mecha designs in Zeta because they're boring, they're fucking cool looking. I just can't remember the names of them.
You are absolutely right about the animations, and since we're talking about that now, the first thing I noticed about Zeta when I started watching it was just how much the animation had improved in just about 5 or 6 years, actually, because 0079 comes out in 79 appropriately. This Zeta starts airing in 85, and the difference between the two of them is night and day, man. So you're really seeing the bigger budget and a lot of the new talent coming through in Zeta. I think it's a real testament to how far Sunrise and probably the anime industry as a whole came in just about 5 or 6 years.
Yeah, Zeta is just this fantastic piece of art.
Zeta is this more politically complex and more morally murky series where you actually see the lines between the two sides blur a lot more. In the first series, the Federation guys fought with Federation suits and the Zeon faction fought with Zeon suits. In this, you see...
It's a hodgepodge of shit.
Yeah, exactly. So like the Titans are using
captured Zeon equipment.
Yeah.
And it's because of the way their faction is. Their faction is supposed to be this clandestine, semi-clandestine organization that uses what it can to achieve its goals, which is to stop Zeon.
And that's true of the AEUG as well. They're using what they can get their hands on, sort of thing.
Because in the series, you don't really see the actual Zeon forces or the actual Federation forces. They're kind of like separate entities.
They pop up a little bit here and there, but yeah, they're mostly in the sidelines kind of doing other stuff whilst the Titans are gassing colonies and shit like that. How would you say Zeta compares to the original series, Robert?
I think Zeta's more interesting. I think Zeta is a more adult series, quote unquote. It's a more grown-up version of the same plot. I suppose in a way, in Zeta Gundam, they're obviously this plucky group of rebels. In Gundam, they're a plucky group of government forces fighting against an occupation force. And most people like things to be the same. So when it comes to series like this, and Star Trek, and other
I knew you were going to find a way. I knew you were going to find a way.
But you get what I mean, where it's like the same notes have to be hit, same kind of things have to be done, because that's what people want. People don't really like change. And Zeta Gundam is very similar to original Gundam, but I think it's better in a lot of ways, and I think in other ways it's worse. There's no beach episode, so 0 out of 10.
I think the best way to describe Zeta and to explain why they go for the decisions that they make in creating it is that Zeta is an out-and-out tragedy. In the traditional theatrical sense of the term, you have these noble characters in the form of people like Camille and Quattro and the rest of it, undone and broken by certain flaws within themselves, and then everyone fucking dies, and that's the end of it. If you look at Zeta as a tragedy, I think some of the plot decisions make a bit more sense, particularly the ones that people get mad about, like Rikoa's defection and things like that. That's meant to compound upon Camille's mixed feelings towards the whole thing, and the tragedy that will be his final fate.
Like, I think most of the characters in Zeta are really well done. Even some of the shit characters that don't get enough showtime or I feel are poorly written, they work well within the series. Just don't think about them out of context.
They fit more towards the message that Tomino is trying to tell with this. Like, both series are trying to do this anti-war thing. I think Zeta manages to nail that a lot more.
Yeah, whereas like original Gundam, they're the good guys and they're fighting the good fight, whilst in Zeta Gundam it's like, we're fighting for what we believe in. Does that make us the good guys? Not necessarily. Zeta has this weird kind of like, it's like how in a D&D game where a DM's trying to be like creepy and grimdark, and just everything is grimdark for no reason. And for some reason in Zeta Gundam, Tomino went, everyone needs to be murky, and also the good guys. They also must be the bad guys, because I've decided this.
I think that's one of the things that becomes quite iconic about Zeta as well, and something that influences a lot of future series within the Gundam franchise as well. Like in the original series, for all there are honorable figures within Zeon are still the bad guys, and for all there are a couple dickheads in the Federation, Fedi's still a good. In this, the faction that was previously upstanding and moral and decent are now a bunch of murderous bastards, and plenty of the former members of Zeon are now part of AEUG as well. So the lines get a lot murkier in Zeta, and I think that's something that people have taken and run with in future Gundam series. To the benefit of the franchise as a whole, I think that's not a bad thing, that they're willing to get complex, as opposed to it just being, oh, the rebels are the good guys and the government forces are bad.
So I always feel Zeta treads the same ground as original Gundam. I think later on, Gundam goes on to more defined tropes and stuff. Like, one of the big things in Gundam is that the Earth is this fragile thing, and once we go into space we're going to have to protect it and all this crap.
Gundam's an anti-war series. It's always been my way
but
of
it's
looking
also not at the same time, because it's very like, what's the German author that wrote Storm of Steel called again?
Ernst Junger?
Yeah, because his whole thing in his book is all about how mankind will evolve through combat, and through the mechanicalization of war, mankind will find its soul, right? That's what Storm of Steel is all about. I think Gundam's just a sci-fi retelling of some of that.
I think that's probably true of the original series. The anti-war themes come across way more in Zeta. I know everyone likes to say the meme with Camille is that he thinks adults are the enemy and all that jazz.
That's right, you know. Death to parents. I think that's a lot to do with that Gundam couldn't adequately show the horrors of war, because realistically, who dies in Gundam that shows you the horror of war is like one character.
In the original series, yeah. In this, fucking everyone dies. Yeah. Again, this is the series that Tomino wanted to make. How can you tell? Well, because he fucking kills everyone. I think there's certain elements, like the many factions or the slightly more moral complexity. I think that's something that Gundam has taken and run with, and that's one of the first times you see it is in Zeta. Stuff like the mid-series mech upgrades as well. That's been commented on before. The first time you really see it in an actual Gundam series. I know Tomino wanted to do it originally, and it is in the novelization of the original series, but the first time he actually gets to do it is in Zeta Gundam, and that's something that you'll see for the rest of the franchise for all. They do that to this day.
Well, it's like the thing I was saying about Star Trek, as much as you harp on me. But like, Star Trek repeats the same themes, and quite often the later shows will be written with a different point of view but the same plot, and like, it's very common from like the original series to TNG to Deep Space Nine to Voyager, where the changing political, viewpoint of things. And then if we talk about more modern series, for example, Enterprise and I suppose Discovery and Picard as well, where like the political ideas have changed so dramatically since then that like the writing of these shows changes to match the political things. Well, so I don't think Gundam really does that. Gundam's plot and its repeated themes of war is bad, save the earth, hit kids in the face when they're being a bit of a dick remains the same, whereas like I think Star Trek does it differently with the whole...
Or in your opinion, worse.
Well, you get what I mean. Zeta is this kind of like, it's the, what is it, fire in a bottle. It's that kind of, everything's working right for once. Like, nothing goes wrong.
Let's do negatives. We were kind of talking about that already.
All his characters are crap.
Not all of them.
Most of them are bad.
The ones that are crap are really, really crap. The one that really stood out for me, why wouldn't you bring back Sailor Mass? I do not understand why you wouldn't do that, because she's such an important character within the first series. For her to like not appear pretty much at all in Zeta makes absolutely no sense. From what I understand, the reason for it is the original voice actor was not available around the time that they were making Zeta, and so Tomino just decided to write her out of the entire plot instead of, I don't know, fucking recasting her or something like a sensible person might. It feels like such a missed opportunity, because Sailor's whole thing in the first series is her trying to reach out and reconnect with her brother Char, and trying to stop him from, you know, murdering his way through the Zabi family, because he thinks that that's how he's gonna fix everything and get his revenge for his father. Whereas by the time of Zeta, he's come to realize that actually, wait, no, what Sailor was saying in the first series is absolutely correct. That maybe wasn't the best approach. So you could have had this really, really interesting dynamic between the two of them, and we never get to see that because Tomino decides just not to include her at all.
Tomino.
I don't know, Tomino, his whole pacing and style definitely isn't for everyone.
I've always thought with Tomino makes better movies than he makes TV series. The Zeta TV series would have been great with some cutting, and that's how I feel about the original series, where I think the movies are better than the original series because they've got more stuff added in, it's better written.
For the originals, let's clarify. The episodes themselves, I can't remember who first pointed this out to me. I think I was reading some reviews on Mal, which is never a good idea.
Oh no. Samurai Flamenco is bad because I'm too dumb to understand it. Help!
But someone made the fair point, I think, that the episodes themselves are very self-contained.
And that's quite common with Tomino.
Yeah, he doesn't really stretch things out over several episodes in a way that he probably could, and would maybe make for less story arcs, but more explored story arcs.
This is why you should watch Brain Powered. It's totally a good series.
Yeah.
Oh no.
One thing we mentioned in our review of the original series is that the ending feels really, really rushed. And there's a reason for that with the original series. They had their budget slashed. They had their episode run cut down massively. They were trying to throw out as much as they could with what little time they had left to them. That's fair enough in the first series. In this series, they had all the budget they needed. They had a full 50 episode run, and yet the ending still manages to feel super fucking rushed. You've got the final battle. Everyone dies. Camille loses his mind. That's it. Game over. Curtains.
Well, that's just Tomino. I think people have this idea that Tomino was like, everything's rushed because he keeps getting this budget cut, but Tomino's just technically a bad writer. He's the Stephen King of anime. No further questions. He does this wonderful setup, he does these wonderful stories, and then his endings are...
I kind of understand what they were going for. They were setting up for Double Zeta. Fair enough, that's cool. But I think it could have used like an epilogue just to wind things down a bit and wrap up some of the story plots, just to kind of explain what happens in that finale. Like, even Wing has a fucking epilogue, for God's sake. And Wing's terrible.
It could be worse. If we haven't really brought it up yet.
Oh, God. There's always the temptation, if you are someone who's interested in something like Zeta, but you're looking at the 50 episode runtime and you go, ooh, that's a bit much. I don't know if I've got time for that. Oh, what's this? There's this thing called the New Translation, which they released in the early 2000s, and it's a compilation movie of the original series with new footage spliced in. That sounds perfect. It's not.
But Camille gets a good ending though.
Yeah, great, which completely fucks with the timeline.
Yeah.
Thank you, Tom. Yeah, no, the New Translation is not great.
Most of Gundam has these really good compilation movies that are, generally speaking, okay, until around this era. And this era, Jesus fucking Christ.
They cut it together in such a strange way. They remove important elements that the original series had. Like, 4 Murasame's plot gets quite literally cut in half. We don't see all that later stuff that is much more important for a character and much more defining. That just gets completely axed. Rosemi doesn't appear fucking at all, apart from like a couple scenes, and then she's gone. No explanation. She was there, now she's not. Don't worry about it. There's no explanation for how the AEUG wind up with different mech suits. Like, Camille just has the Zeta Gundam all of a sudden. It's not explained. It's the same with Char's.
I feel for
well.
Mobile Suit Zeta Gundam, the New Translation. At this micro instant, for you, hate.
Yes.
Fuck this. It's why I love Star Wars. But like, fuck George Lucas. He's such a cringy George Lucas campaigned against this changes when people were colorizing films because he was like, these are not how the films were supposed to be seen. These films should be preserved. This is how I feel about this. Oh, we'll just splice in new CG because it's cool. Fuck off, right? If I wanted to watch CG new Gundam, I'll watch new CG Gundam, but I don't want to watch this shit.
Elements of the past and the future combining to make something not quite as good as either.
You could make a justification for revisiting, say, Mobile Suit Gundam, the original series, because yeah, I quite like it, but the animation is a bit dated. You don't need to fix the animation in Zeta. It's good.
But yeah, like, and the new translation has this splice to CGI scene from new translation. It's like, fuck this.
I knew the CGI was going to make me so mad. The second I saw it, it's like, I'm waiting for the steam pins as Rob starts watching.
Just fuck this. Fuck everything about this.
It is the worst way to experience a really, really interesting story. Don't do that to yourself. Take the time to watch through the original series as it was originally aired. It has its issues, but it is a fuck of a lot better than the new translation. Also, as we mentioned, it completely fucks up the ending as well, which means that the new translation doesn't even fit into the timeline anymore. What are you doing, Tomino? Stop it. I don't really have anything else to add here, which means, I guess, we're on to the conclusion.
Watch the show. Refuses to elaborate.
Refuses to elaborate further, leaves. I don't know, man. I can understand why some people consider this, like, the Gundam series, even compared to the original, why this has become as iconic as it is, and why it's helped to define the franchise as much as it has. There's a lot of really, really interesting stuff going on here, and even the stuff that doesn't quite work still has a certain amount of charm to it. For better or for worse, this was 100% the series that Tomino wanted to make. I'm very glad he got the chance to do it, and I'm glad that so much of it worked out in the way that it did.
Yes.
Thank you for coming to my TED Talk.
Uncle Ted.
The other thing that we probably need to mention as well, since we're now at the end of the video, we seem to do this every, hopefully, December, if I manage to edit this in time.
Fuck you, Past Dave. I fucking did it.
When we did the last Gundam video, that was when we'd hit 2,000 subscribers, and we were already very confused about that. But now, a year on, despite having not uploaded for like 4 or 5 months, we still have 3,000 subscribers now, and I'm really confused as to...
Let's end this.
But yeah, what the fuck are you people doing? Holy shit. That's a lot of people.
I think most people come on our channel just to make fun of the way we pronounce things. Gundam.
Yeah.
Pat Labor.
If you wanted it pronounced Pat Labor, you should have put a fucking U in it, like a civilized person would. But yeah, I guess does this make this a 3,000 subscriber special? Robert, thank the nice people for subscribing to us, I guess.
Fuck off.